Okay, so prompted to make this by Jonathan Verrett. Apparently he made a testimonial video expressing his views on atheism and why he is an atheist. So I gotta give credit where credit is due. Thank you for the idea, Mr. Verrett. On to the story. Okay, so born into a Southern Baptist household, given to my grandparents, hardcore Southern Baptists, went to church every day, every Sunday, still do go to church, still forced to. You know what? I can deal with that. Good to no one's enemy. So my granddad was a preacher, rode with the Christian Motorcyclist Association, and I ended up becoming a Christian at one of their meetings, one of their little rallies at Iron Mountain, I think in Arkansas. So I think it was about 6, 7 when I became a Christian, and shortly thereafter I was baptized, and for a while I believed. It wasn't until about 8th grade that I actually began to question my beliefs and truly question the assumptions that I had about the world. For an 8th grader, I think that's actually pretty awesome. But being in a Christian household, sadly I couldn't get it earlier. So anyway, I began to question my assumptions as to, first off, what God was and what it entailed, what Christianity meant and what I had to do. Eventually it got to the point where I couldn't bring myself to believe in the existence of a God. There was too much against it. There was too much that said, no, I refuse to believe this. There's too much negativity. So, anyway. There's a lot of reasons that I choose to be an atheist, that I believe that there's nothing more than this. But I think the biggest 2 reasons to be an atheist is probably the accountability towards action that it has and the comfort that it gives me in the idea of death. There's also reasons, of course, why I don't want to be a part of a religion, such as the bigoted, forced, egotistical beliefs that we are the only religion that could possibly be right. We are 100% true, even though we have almost zero real proof and fact. That right there, I can't be a part of that. Being a logical human being, being rational and accepting that, I cannot believe 100% in a religion that's going to force its beliefs down other people's throats. And then child indoctrination. Face it, I was indoctrinated as a child. I didn't really know what I was doing. Emotional experiment, man. You don't indoctrinate children into a religious cult. You just don't do that. That's not cool. You hear Christians always complaining about indoctrinating small children into all these offshoot cults. Well, how better are you? You don't ever give them a chance to truly grow up enough to analyze what they believe. Anyway, reasons I am an atheist. Let's start with death. It's comforting to know that this isn't a test, to know that this is what I have, that this is what my life is, and I don't have to worry about death because I know exactly where I'm going. 6 feet under the ground to die. That's just, well, actually, hopefully I'd already be dead, but yeah. 6 feet under the ground, eaten by worms, decomposed. I don't exist anymore. Not as my original arrangement as a human being. I mean, we're nothing more than an arrangement of carbon atoms and a little bit of oxygen and hydrogen put together, and a convenient biological neural pathway. That's all we are. Why do you have to believe that we're special? Why? I mean, isn't it enough to agree that the world is pretty? We don't have to believe in things we don't see either. The world is nice. It's good the way it is. And when it dies, just be happy you saw it. The idea that this has to be a test for the true eternity, it's one of those things that leads someone to believe that this life isn't important, that this life isn't beautiful or valuable. And that's not right. because the world is beautiful. The world has so many amazing things to offer people. And I have no reason to believe that. I'm in a shit situation, you know? But I accept the fact that no matter what happens, you can't stop it. And it doesn't matter. Because you'll have your opportunity to see things here. You'll have your opportunity at life. And then it's going to be over. But that's not a thing to mourn or be afraid of. That should be encouragement. That should be encouragement to live this life to the fullest, to gain as many experiences as you can. And not because you should gain them for some ulterior motive. You should gain them for the sake of gaining the experience itself. There is no intrinsic value to life. Once humans have achieved all their goals, they're going to get stuck into a set of boredom. That's inevitable. There will be nothing more for them to do. And if life had an intrinsic value, just being alive, well, that would be okay. But it's not. Humans have to struggle, and humans, we need experience. That should be an intrinsic proof enough that life has no meaning. Because if it did, we'd be happy with just life. We'd be happy in a painless, struggleless environment, but we're not. Humans always have to have something driving it. It's just the way it is. As far as responsibility goes, responsibility with life, with people, the actions that you do have so many consequences, so many intended, unintended consequences. We have to be careful because, well, we could do terrible things. We could never mean it and do horrible, terrible things. But when you have the ability to just look up at your God and say, please forgive me. 50 million people could be dead because of you, but God forgave you, so it's okay. No guilt. It provides people a cop-out for being responsible for their actions. People can do what they please as long as they ask forgiveness. That's okay. That's totally acceptable in religion. And I choose to believe that humans should be responsible for their actions. We should be careful with the way we interact with both our environment and the people around us, because let's face it, if this is all we have, then we could be doing really terrible, unfair things. Ultimately, a lot of people ask me, if you don't believe in a God or an intrinsic value to life, why haven't you killed yourself? You know, I've thought about it, but ultimately, why should I? If being alive doesn't accomplish anything and being dead doesn't accomplish anything, why should I do it? Why shouldn't I just see if I can pull some enjoyment out of it? But what's the point, Michael? What's the point of the enjoyment? You know? Who cares? Who gives a flying fuck what the point of the enjoyment is? Clearly there's no purpose to life. Why not? Why not enjoy it? That's my question. Why live, Michael? Well, why die? Sure, you may not like the idea of a pointless life, but I find complete comfort in it because it provides me responsibility and it provides me a course. It provides me a real reason to care about this life, and ultimately that's all anybody needs. Other than that, there's a lot of reasons, your general atheistic reasons to not be a Christian. Of course, just the not belief that there's a God, all the bigoted, forced beliefs of the church, the hypocrisy of the church. But you know, a lot of those just aren't good arguments. Ultimately, I find myself being an atheist that's distinct from a lot. A lot will call themselves atheists and try and force their beliefs down on Christians. They'll try and say, hey, Christian, you're wrong, here's why. I don't accept that. I could be wrong, and I'll be the first to admit it to you that I could be wrong. There could be a God. It will go against everything I've seen, every piece of evidence out there, but there could be a God. And if there is, oh well, I made my choice and I'll live with it. Because ultimately, the idea of a heaven sounds terrible anyway. I mean, eternal paradise for eternity? That sounds exactly like what I described earlier. When humans have accomplished all their goals, they have eternal boredom. To be consigned to boredom with no struggle in life, for eternity in heaven, I find it much more comforting to believe there isn't a God, even if there is, just so I can go to hell. You know? Cameroon about the myth of Sisyphus, and how you have to imagine Sisyphus is happy, because he has a purpose to his life. Sure, it may be repetitive, it may accomplish nothing in the end game, but how is that any different from human life? Repetitive. Bring another child into the world. They grow up into a world, do stuff, die. Eventually nobody remembers them. More children, more stuff, more die. Nobody remembers. Ultimately, what is life but pushing a rock up a hill just to watch it fall? You know? We have to imagine Sisyphus is happy. Because ultimately, that moment, as he watches the rock roll down the hill, that's his moment of happiness. Because he knows he still has a purpose in life. He still has a struggle, something to work for. He doesn't have the eternal boredom that denies life its intrinsic value. I'm okay with that. So if I'm wrong, power to me. If I'm right, still win. Ultimately, I call it a win-win situation. Sure, you can say I'm going to hell, that's a terrible thing, you want to go to heaven, but you know what? It's just a cop-out of death and a cop-out of responsibility. It's a refusal to accept what may not be obviously true, but guys, if you just get down and look at it, you'll find that the idea of a God can be revolting. The idea that he would put us through this is revolting. Sure, this may be the quote-unquote best of all situations, but you know what? If he created the universe, why couldn't he just recreate the situation too? He didn't want zombie slaves? Well, why didn't he come down and be like, hey guys, I exist? That's not forcing us to believe anything. No. Ultimately, I just find it more comforting, more realistic, more fair, more responsible, and logically a more sound foundation to believe that there isn't a God. Go for it. Come at me. Convince me why I'm wrong. You won't do it.